They hadn't been forced into it. They had walked here on their own. Paused on the edge of a decision they didn't fully understand, guided by voices that knew exactly what to say and exactly when to say it. This wasn't a story about a bad website. This wasn't about curiosity gone wrong. This was about how easy it is to break someone who already feels broken. And how, somewhere behind a screen, people were watching, waiting, guiding teens to turn against themselves, one message at a time. And once it starts, walking away isn't as simple as closing an app. Welcome to the Crime Lens, the channel that takes you beyond the headlines and inside the mind of real criminals. Today we're going to piece together one of the darkest, most chilling true stories of our time, and uncover what it says about the world we live in right now. So grab a seat. Turn the lights down. This one is going to haunt you. Before the messages, before the secrecy, before the long nights and the locked door. The teen was just normal. Not the kind of normal that stands out. Not loud. Not popular. Just someone who blended into the background of classrooms and hallways, the kind of kid teachers described as quiet but polite, and classmates barely noticed unless they were sitting right next to them. At home they were known as the responsible one. The one who didn't cause trouble. The one who did what they were told without needing to be asked twice. Parents trusted them. That trust would later turn into guilt. They woke up early for school, headphones on, music low enough to still hear their name if it was called. They liked routines. Familiar routes. Same seat on the bus. Same corner of the lunchroom. Same path home every afternoon. It wasn't that life was terrible. It just felt thin. At school they weren't bullied in the obvious way. No shoving. No stolen lunch money. It was quieter than that. Looks held for a second too long. Laughs that stopped when they walked by. Inside jokes they were never part of. They tried to ignore it. Everyone said teenage years were awkward. Everyone said it would pass. But some things stick. A comment about their appearance that replayed in their head for weeks. A joke about their voice. A teacher praising everyone except them. A group project where no one wanted to pair up. Small things. Individually harmless. Together heavy. At home they stayed in their room more often. Not because they were hiding anything, not yet, but because it felt easier than explaining why they were quiet. Easier than answering questions like, "Are you okay?" when they didn't know how to explain that they weren't sure. Their parents thought it was just adolescence. Mood swings. Growing pains. They remembered being that age. They didn't want to overreact. Dinner conversations stayed surface level. School was fine. Friends were okay. Homework was done. And for the most part that was true. The teens still laughed at videos online. Still played games. Still had moments where everything felt normal again. Those moments are important, because they're what made the change so hard to notice. Late at night though things felt different. That's when thoughts got louder. That's when the day replayed itself. Every awkward moment. Every silence. Every "why did I say that?" looping over and over. They started spending more time online because it quieted their head. The internet didn't interrupt. Didn't judge their pauses. Didn't look bored when they talked too much or too little. Online you could be anyone. Or no one. They joined forums. Comment sections. Group chats. Nothing dark. Nothing alarming. Just places where people talked openly about feeling lost, misunderstood, tired of pretending everything was fine. For the first time the teen felt seen, not in a spotlight way but in a quiet nod of recognition. "Me too," people said. "Same here." That mattered more than they realized. They started sharing small pieces of themselves. Complaints about school. Jokes about being invisible. Late-night thoughts they wouldn't say out loud during the day. No one told them they were wrong. No one minimized how they felt. Instead people listened. Validated. Agreed. That's how the door cracked open. Not with fear. Not with threats. But with understanding. Looking back there were signs. They slept less. Ate differently. Became more guarded with their phone. Started flinching when notifications came in, then immediately checking them. But to everyone else it looked like normal teenage behavior. Phones are everything now. Everyone stays up late. Everyone wants privacy. No one noticed the shift in their posture. The way they held themselves smaller. The way their confidence thinned out slowly like it was being worn down instead of shattered. And the teen didn't notice either. They still thought of themselves as the same person. Just tired. Just stressed. Just trying to figure things out. They had no idea that someone else had already started paying attention to them. Watching what they posted. Noting when they were online. Learning which words made them open up. They didn't know that their loneliness was being read not as a feeling, but as an opportunity. At this point, nothing bad had happened yet. No lines crossed. No alarms triggered. No reason to panic. Which is exactly why what came next worked. Because when the first message arrived, the one that felt different, it didn't feel like danger. It felt like relief. And that's the most important thing to understand. This didn't begin with a broken teen. It began with a human one. The message didn't come with a warning. No skull emojis. No threats. No obvious red flags. It arrived like everything else online. Casual, forgettable, easy to ignore. At first, the teen was scrolling late at night again, thumb moving without thinking, when a notification popped up from a platform they barely remembered joining. A private message. From a name they didn't recognize. They almost swiped it away. But something stopped them. The message was short. I saw what you posted earlier. You're not wrong for feeling that way. That was it. No introduction. No explanation. Just understanding. The teen stared at the screen longer than they meant to. Someone had noticed. Someone had read what they wrote instead of scrolling past it like everyone else. They replied cautiously. One sentence. Neutral. Safe. The response came almost immediately. Most people pretend everything's fine. You don't. That line landed harder than it should have. They talked for a while after that. About nothing important. School. Music. How exhausting it was to feel invisible all the time. The stranger didn't overshare. Didn't push. They listened. Asked questions that felt thoughtful, not invasive. And then they said something that shifted the tone. There are others like you. People who actually understand. The teen hesitated. That familiar tightening in their chest. The one that usually told them to be careful. They asked what they meant. The reply came slower this time. There's a private group. We don't invite everyone. Only people who think for themselves. That should have been the moment they stopped. But it wasn't. Because being told you're different feels good when you've spent your whole life feeling unwanted. The teen didn't join right away. They said they'd think about it. The stranger didn't argue. Didn't pressure them. Just sent one final message before logging off. If you ever feel like no one gets you, this place does. That night, the teen lay awake longer than usual. They told themselves it was probably nothing. Just another online group. But their mind kept circling back to the words, only people who think for themselves. The next day at school felt heavier than usual. Conversation sounded dull. Laughter felt distant. The world seemed louder and quieter at the same time. That evening, the teen searched for the group. It wasn't easy to find. No public page. No obvious links. Just whispers in comment sections. Usernames that replied with vague hints instead of answers. That made it feel exclusive. They found an invite link hours later, buried deep in a thread that looked harmless on the surface. Their finger hovered over the screen. It's just curiosity, they told themselves. The group opened into a simple interface. Dark background. Minimal design. No bright colors. No welcome message. Just a pinned post at the top. If you're here, you already know why. Members didn't use real names. No profile pictures. Just symbols. Numbers. Blank spaces where identities should be. At first, the conversations felt normal. People sharing frustrations. Talking about how fake the world felt. Complaining about parents who didn't listen and friends who didn't care. The teen scrolled quietly. Reading. Observing. Then someone replied directly to them. New here? Take your time. Don't rush. That kindness disarmed them. Over the next few days, the teen checked the group more often. Mostly at night. Mostly alone. They didn't post much, but when they did, responses came fast. Encouraging. Understanding. Personal. Too personal. Someone remembered details they hadn't repeated. Someone noticed when they went quiet for a few hours. That should have scared them. Instead, it felt like belonging. But slowly the language changed. Posts about feeling misunderstood turned into posts about being superior. About how most people were weak. Blind. Controlled. The group framed the world as hostile, and themselves as the only ones who saw it clearly. If people don't accept you, it's because they're afraid of what you represent. That idea settled deep. The teen began to see school differently. Family conversations differently. Friends differently. Advice from the group came wrapped in concern. They don't really want what's best for you. They'll try to pull you back when you start changing. Change. That word came up a lot. The teen didn't realize the invitation hadn't been to join a group. It had been an invitation to rewrite how they saw themselves, and everyone else. By the time they noticed something felt wrong, they were already checking the group before checking their own messages. Already trusting voices they'd never met over people who loved them. Already learning that loyalty mattered more than truth. And the scariest part? No one had forced them. They had accepted the invitation willingly. Because it didn't look like a trap. It looked like home. At first nothing felt wrong. That was the trick. The group didn't shout. Didn't threaten. Didn't rush the teen into anything dramatic. Instead, it wrapped itself around them slowly, like fog rolling in so gently you don't notice until you can't see where you came from. Every message felt intentional. Personal. When the teen posted something small, a bad day at school, a fight at home, a moment of doubt, the responses came quickly. That makes sense. Anyone in your position would feel that way. You're not broken. The world is. Those words hit harder than praise ever had. In real life, feelings were questioned, minimized, explained away. But here, every emotion was validated, no matter how dark or confusing it was. Especially then. The group began reframing everything. Parents weren't concerned, they were controlling. Teachers weren't strict, they were suppressing individuality. Friends weren't busy, they were fake. Slowly, the teen stopped seeing misunderstandings and started seeing enemies. Whenever doubt crept in, the group was ready. They're trying to pull you back into being small. They don't want you to change. Change became the goal. A badge of honor. The teen was encouraged to think of themselves as someone who had outgrown the people around them. Someone evolving while others stayed stuck. That idea felt empowering. But empowerment came with conditions. The group praised loyalty, constantly. They talked about trust as if it were fragile, something that could be shattered by the wrong conversation. What we share here stays here. Outsiders twist things. The teen stopped mentioning the group to anyone. Not because they were told to, but because it felt safer that way. The group also started asking questions. Not obvious ones. Subtle ones. How do you feel when your parents talk to you like that? What goes through your head when you look in the mirror? What scares you the most about yourself? Each question peeled back another layer. The teen answered honestly. They wanted to be understood. And the group listened. But listening wasn't the same as helping. They began reframing the teen's pain as proof of strength. Most people couldn't handle what you feel. You're strong because you face it. Pain stopped being something to heal. It became something to protect. Then came the comparisons. Stories about others in the group who were braver, more committed, further along. The teen felt pressure, not loud pressure but quiet comparison. The kind that makes you question if you're doing enough. Whenever the teen hesitated or expressed discomfort, reassurance followed immediately. Take your time. We just don't want you to fall back into lies. Fear crept in slowly. Fear of losing the group. Fear of being misunderstood again. Fear of being alone. The group positioned itself as the only safe place left. When the teen had a good day offline, laughing with someone, feeling normal, the group subtly undermined it. Be careful. They don't really see you like we do. Joy became suspicious. Privacy became isolation. The teen didn't notice when their inner voice started sounding like the group. They began judging themselves more harshly, questioning their own thoughts, feeling guilty for moments of happiness, because the group framed suffering as growth, and weakness as betrayal. Late at night, the teen lay in bed, phone glowing, heart racing, torn between exhaustion and the need to stay connected. Messages came in with urgency now. Are you still with us? You've been quiet. Silence felt dangerous. The teen stopped trusting their instincts. Every feeling was filtered through the group's language. Every doubt was redirected back at them. If something felt wrong, it meant they were wrong. That was the most damaging shift. The group didn't tell the teen to hate themselves. They taught them how. By reframing every flaw as failure. Every hesitation as weakness. Every emotion as a test. And the teen, desperate to belong, internalized it all. From the outside, nothing looked alarming yet. They still went to school. Still ate dinner. Still smiled when spoken to. But inside, the foundation was cracking. The group wasn't just influencing the teen anymore. It was replacing them. And by the time the teen realized they were losing control over their own thoughts, the group had already convinced them of one terrifying idea. Without us, you're nothing. That belief settled in quietly. And it changed everything. Isolation didn't arrive all at once. It crept in through small decisions that felt reasonable at the time. The teen stopped answering texts right away. Not because they didn't care, but because the conversations felt exhausting. Every reply needed energy. Every joke needed timing. Every interaction felt like a performance. Online, none of that was required. In the group, silence was noticed. Question. At school, silence barely registered. So the teen leaned toward the place where they mattered. Lunch periods became shorter. They sat alone more often, headphones on, eyes down. Not sad, focused, waiting for the next vibration in their pocket. At home they stayed in their room longer. The door wasn't locked, but it might as well have been. Family voices drifted in from the hallway, muffled and distant, like noise from another life. Parents noticed, but gently. They didn't want to push. You okay? Yeah. School good? Fine. End of conversation. The teen wasn't lying, not exactly. Fine just meant manageable. It meant not worth explaining. The group filled the space that real life couldn't reach. They were there when the teen woke up. There when they got home. There late into the night when thoughts spiraled and sleep wouldn't come. The group remembered things. They noticed patterns. They commented when the teen seemed off. They sent messages that felt urgent, personal. You don't sound like yourself today. What happened? That kind of attention is addictive when you're not used to it. Slowly, the teen stopped sharing their feelings anywhere else. Why bother? Offline conversations felt clumsy and incomplete. Online, every emotion was met with instant feedback. But the feedback came with a cost. The group began framing the outside world as unsafe. They don't understand you. They'll only judge. If they knew the real you, they'd pull away. The teen didn't argue, because part of them believed it. They started canceling plans, making excuses, saying they were tired, busy, stressed. Friends stopped asking after a while. That hurt, but the group had already prepared them for that pain. See, we warned you. The teen's world narrowed. School, home, screen, and mostly, screen. Their phone became the first thing they reached for in the morning and the last thing they put down at night. Notifications triggered adrenaline. Silence triggered anxiety. When the group was quiet, the teen felt uneasy, like they were being watched, or worse, forgotten. The group encouraged dependence without naming it. We're always here. You can trust us. We won't leave. Those words felt comforting. Until they didn't. Because trust started turning into obligation. The teen felt pressure to respond quickly. To stay engaged. To prove they were still loyal. Still committed. If they pulled back even slightly, the tone shifted. Are you doubting us? Did someone say something? The teen learned that distance had consequences. So they stayed close. Offline, things deteriorated quietly. Grades slipped. Not dramatically, just enough to raise eyebrows. Teachers mentioned distraction. Parents suggested less screen time. That suggestion caused panic. The idea of losing access to the group felt unbearable. The teen snapped back defensively. Raised their voice. Shut down. Parents were confused. Unsure where they went wrong. The teen retreated further. The group noticed everything. They're trying to control you. They don't respect who you're becoming. The teen stopped seeing concern as care. They saw it as interference. Real life started to feel unreal. Dull, slow, empty. Online life felt sharp, intense, meaningful. The teen began measuring their worth by how much they participated, how much they shared, how much they endured. Because endurance had become proof of loyalty. Late at night, lying in bed, phone glowing, the teen felt exhausted, but afraid to sleep. Afraid they'd miss something. Afraid the group would move on without them. Afraid that without constant connection they'd disappear again. They didn't realize how deeply alone they had become. Surrounded by voices. Validated constantly. Yet completely isolated from anyone who could actually help. The group had succeeded. Not by cutting the teen off from the world. But by convincing them the world had already cut them off. And once that belief took hold, the screen wasn't just a place to escape anymore. It was the only place that felt real. Isolation didn't arrive all at once. It crept in through small decisions that felt reasonable at the time. The teen stopped answering texts right away. Not because they didn't care, but because the conversations felt exhausting. Every reply needed energy. Every joke needed timing. Every interaction felt like a performance. Online, none of that was required. In the group, silence was noticed. Question. At school, silence barely registered. So the teen leaned toward the place where they mattered. Lunch periods became shorter. They sat alone more often, headphones on, eyes down. Not sad, focused, waiting for the next vibration in their pocket. At home, they stayed in their room longer. The door wasn't locked, but it might as well have been. Family voices drifted in from the hallway, muffled and distant, like noise from another life. Parents noticed, but gently. They didn't want to push. You okay? Yeah. School good? Fine. End of conversation. The teen wasn't lying, not exactly. Fine just meant manageable. It meant not worth explaining. The group filled the space that real life couldn't reach. They were there when the teen woke up. They're when they got home. They're late into the night when thoughts spiraled and sleep wouldn't come. The group remembered things. They noticed patterns. They commented when the teen seemed off. They sent messages that felt urgent, personal. You don't sound like yourself today. What happened? That kind of attention is addictive when you're not used to it. Slowly, the teens stopped sharing their feelings anywhere else. Why bother? Offline conversations felt clumsy and incomplete. Online, every emotion was met with instant feedback. But the feedback came with a cost. The group began framing the outside world as unsafe. They don't understand you. They'll only judge. If they knew the real you, they'd pull away. The teen didn't argue, because part of them believed it. They started canceling plans, making excuses, saying they were tired, busy, stressed. Friends stopped asking after a while. That hurt, but the group had already prepared them for that pain. See, we warned you. The teen's world narrowed. School, home, screen, and mostly, screen. Their phone became the first thing they reached for in the morning and the last thing they put down at night. Notifications triggered adrenaline. Silence triggered anxiety. When the group was quiet, the teen felt uneasy, like they were being watched, or worse, forgotten. The group encouraged dependence without naming it. We're always here. You can trust us. We won't leave. Those words felt comforting. Until they didn't. Because trust started turning into obligation. The teen felt pressure to respond quickly. To stay engaged. To prove they were still loyal. Still committed. If they pulled back even slightly, the tone shifted. Are you doubting us? Did someone say something? The teen learned that distance had consequences. So they stayed close. Offline, things deteriorated quietly. Grades slipped. Not dramatically, just enough to raise eyebrows. Teachers mentioned distraction. Parents suggested less screen time. That suggestion caused panic. The idea of losing access to the group felt unbearable. The teen snapped back defensively. Raised their voice. Shut down. Parents were confused. Hurt. Unsure where they went wrong. The teen retreated further. The group noticed everything. They're trying to control you. They don't respect who you're becoming. The teen stopped seeing concern as care. They saw it as interference. Real life started to feel unreal. Dull. Slow. Empty. Online life felt sharp. Intense. Meaningful. The teen began measuring their worth by how much they participated. How much they shared. How much they endured. Because endurance had become proof of loyalty. Late at night, lying in bed, phone glowing, the teen felt exhausted, but afraid to sleep. Afraid they'd miss something. Afraid the group would move on without them. Afraid that without constant connection they'd disappear again. They didn't realize how deeply alone they had become. Surrounded by voices. Validated constantly. Yet completely isolated from anyone who could actually help. The group had succeeded. Not by cutting the teen off from the world. But by convincing them the world had already cut them off. And once that belief took hold, the screen wasn't just a place to escape anymore. It was the only place that felt real. The first crack didn't come from the group. It came from a pause. For the first time in weeks, the group went quiet. No messages. No reactions. No late-night check-ins. Just silence. At first, the teen thought it was a glitch. Maybe the app froze. Maybe their internet dropped. They refreshed the screen again and again, heart beating faster each time. Nothing. The silence felt wrong. Not peaceful, threatening. The teen paced the room, phone in hand, waiting for the familiar buzz. Minutes passed. Then an hour. That's when the unease set in. Because the group never went quiet like this. They were always watching. Always present. Always there to guide, to comment, to pull. The teen scrolled back through old messages, reading them with fresh eyes. Things that once felt comforting now sounded rehearsed. Repeated. Almost scripted. The same phrases. The same reassurances. The same warnings about the outside world. It was subtle, but once noticed, it couldn't be unseen. The teen realized something else too. No one in the group ever shared real details about themselves. No last names. No locations. No photos that weren't heavily filtered or cropped. No stories that could be verified. Just voices. Just words. Just influence. The silence dragged on, and the teen's thoughts wandered somewhere they hadn't been allowed to go in a long time. Home. They glanced toward the door. The hallway light was on. A familiar glow spilled under the crack. Normal sounds drifted in, a TV murmuring, someone moving in the kitchen. Real life. It felt distant, but it was still there. The teen hesitated, then stepped out of the room. Their parent looked up, surprised. Couldn't sleep? The teen nodded. It was a small moment. Ordinary. But it felt heavy, like standing on a bridge between two worlds. They almost went back to their room. Almost. But instead they sat down. No long conversation followed. No dramatic confession. Just quiet company. The kind that doesn't demand anything. For the first time in weeks, the pressure eased slightly. Later that night the phone buzzed. The group was back. But the tone was different. Where were you? You disappeared. No concern. No warmth. Just accusation. The teen replied cautiously. Said they were tired. Said they needed a break. That answer wasn't accepted. We don't take breaks from each other. You know that. The teen's chest tightened. They hadn't realized how strict the rules were until now. They pushed back just a little. Said they had a life outside the group. The response came fast and sharp. That life doesn't understand you. You're slipping. The words felt familiar, but now they sounded desperate. The teen noticed something else. The group needed them. Not the other way around. When the teen didn't respond immediately, messages piled up. Questions turned into pressure. Pressure turned into threats of exclusion. Don't make us doubt you. You don't want to lose this. Lose what? That question echoed. What exactly had the group given them? Connection, yes, but at a cost. Attention, but only if earned. Belonging, but only through obedience. The teen felt a strange clarity wash over them. The group didn't care about their well-being. They cared about control. That realization was terrifying. Because it meant everything they trusted had been built on manipulation. The teen started paying attention in ways they hadn't before. They noticed how certain members always pushed conversations toward emotional extremes. How vulnerability was encouraged, but only when it served the group's narrative. They noticed how doubt was punished. How independence was framed as betrayal. The group sensed the shift. Their messages became more intense. More urgent. You're changing. Who's putting ideas in your head? The teen didn't answer right away. That silence felt powerful. For the first time, the screen didn't control the moment. The teen set the phone down and stared at the ceiling, heart racing, not from fear of losing the group, but from the realization of how close they'd come to losing themselves. The next day at school, something small happened. A teacher asked if everything was okay. Just that. The teen almost said, fine. But instead they hesitated. And in that hesitation something broke loose. They didn't explain everything. They didn't have to. They just admitted they felt overwhelmed. That something online didn't feel right. The teacher listened. Took it seriously. And that mattered more than the teen expected. That afternoon the group sent another message. You're either with us, or you're not. The line was clear now. The teen saw it for what it was. An ultimatum designed to isolate them completely. They didn't reply. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The group grew frantic. Answer. Don't do this. The teen turned the phone off. The silence that followed was terrifying, but also freeing. For the first time, the fear wasn't about being alone. It was about how close they'd come to disappearing into something that didn't care if they survived it. And somewhere behind the pressure, behind the manipulation, behind the fake unity, the group realized something too. They were losing control. The unraveling started small. A notification from a friend. A concerned parent. A teacher asking questions. Little interruptions that should have been ordinary, but to someone tethered to the group, they felt like tremors beneath their feet. The teens sat in their room, phone buzzing on the desk. They wanted to ignore it, wanted to stay locked into the group, the one place that had felt like safety. But a pang of curiosity or maybe fear nudged them. They clicked the message. Are you okay? You haven't been online. We're worried. It was from a real person. Someone who had actually seen them, someone who noticed the cracks forming before the group did. That's when the first seed of doubt took root. The teens started noticing inconsistencies in the group's stories. Members who said one thing at night contradicted themselves in the day. Advice that once seemed urgent now felt manipulative. And the carefully cultivated sense of, we're all together began to feel more like strings tied to a puppet. One post stood out. Sometimes people leave. We can't stop them. It wasn't meant for the teen specifically, but they read it like a warning. A threat. And that small slip showed the group wasn't invincible. The teen started asking questions. Quietly at first, hesitantly, almost whispering into the chat. What do you mean by loyalty? Why do we only listen to each other? Responses came slower than before. Shorter. Defensive. Almost panicked. The teen realized the truth. The group had boundaries, rules, hierarchies. It wasn't about support. It was about control. Outside the screen the world kept moving. Family noticed the teen's mood shifting, quieter, more distant at first. But now, when the teen opened up even a little, adults began to intervene. Concern wasn't suspicion, it was care. And that care cut through the haze that the group had spun. The teen's first brave step came when they told a friend what was happening. Just fragments, not the whole story, but enough. The friend didn't judge, didn't minimize, listened, and then told them, "You're not alone in this. We can help you." It was a revelation. The teen had been conditioned to believe the group was the only safe place. Now they saw a crack in that illusion. Real people, real attention, real care. The group noticed the shift immediately. Messages became more aggressive, more insistent, almost desperate. "Stop listening to them. They don't understand you like we do. If you leave now, you'll regret it." But the teen didn't reply. The hold the group had on their mind began to weaken. It wasn't instant liberation. The shadows of manipulation lingered. Anxiety, guilt, fear of abandonment all tugged at them. But now they had allies beyond the screen. People who saw them, not just what they could control. The teen started taking small steps back into reality, answering texts from friends, talking to a parent, sharing a little about their experiences. Every action chipped away at the group's grip. And then came the big breakthrough. A parent contacted the platform where the group existed, reporting its manipulative practices. Messages from the group stopped coming entirely. The chat that had been their universe went silent. The screen that had dictated so much of their life became quiet. The teen sat in the dark room, phone in hand, breathing. Silence felt strange. Heavy. But not bad. They were free to think again, free to make decisions for themselves, free to feel their own emotions without fear of judgment from strangers hiding behind screens. It would take time to rebuild trust in the real world. To repair connections that had weakened under the group's influence. But the first, most crucial step was done. Awareness. The teen understood now that belonging wasn't about obedience. It wasn't about loyalty tests or fear. It was about connection. Real, human, unmanipulated connection. And as the sun began to rise, spilling light into the room that had been dark for so long, the teen made a quiet promise. Never again would they let themselves be seen as nothing more than someone to control. And somewhere behind the messages, somewhere in the shadows of the online world, the group realized they had lost their grip on one more life. The days after the group's hold began to loosen felt strange and heavy. The teen woke up without the usual tension in their chest, but instead of relief they felt disoriented. For so long, every thought, every feeling had been filtered through the group's lens. Every joy, every doubt, every fear had been measured against their approval. Now suddenly there was silence. The world was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. At school, familiar corridors seemed different. Friends smiled, but the teen noticed how isolated they had been. Teachers asked questions that used to feel invasive. Now they felt caring. Even the small things, someone holding the door open, a text from a classmate checking in, reminded them that life existed outside the screen, and it was messy, unpredictable, and real. Home felt foreign too. Parents noticed the subtle changes. The teen talking more, making eye contact, showing small signs of initiative again. There were moments of hesitation, moments of fear that if they revealed too much of what had happened, they'd be judged or misunderstood. But slowly, conversations became easier. The teen began sharing tiny fragments of their experience. How the group had made them doubt themselves, how isolation had become a cage, and how the need for belonging had almost cost them everything. Counseling became a lifeline. A professional helped the teen untangle the web of manipulation, explaining why the group's tactics were effective, and helping them see that it wasn't their fault. For the first time, the teen understood that being controlled was not a reflection of weakness. It was a testament to how skilled predators could exploit vulnerability. The social media platforms where the group had operated were reported, flagged, and eventually investigated. The teen followed updates in the news, realizing that the group wasn't just an isolated danger. It was a network preying on countless teens. That knowledge stung. Relief was mixed with anger and fear. The world outside the screen was not entirely safe, but it was real, and it was theirs to navigate again. Rebuilding friendships was gradual. People who had been pushed away were met with apologies, explanations, and sometimes confusion. Some friends were cautious, some were hurt. But genuine connections, the ones built on trust rather than fear, began to reform. Even simple acts, a lunch together, a phone call, a shared laugh, became profoundly significant. The teen also learned to reconnect with themselves. Activities they had abandoned during the group's influence, drawing, journaling, sports, music, returned slowly. Each act of creativity or expression reinforced the idea that identity isn't something others can dictate. It's something you reclaim. But recovery wasn't linear. Nights were hardest. Memories of the group's pressure lingered. Moments of doubt, guilt, or fear would resurface. Each notification, each unknown message would trigger a brief panic. The teen learned to pause, to breathe, and to remind themselves. The voices that mattered now were real, tangible, and safe. Family became stronger, more attentive. Boundaries were redefined. Phones were monitored not to invade privacy but to ensure safety. Open conversations replaced secrecy. The teen realized that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt, but only with patience, honesty, and time. Through the journey, the teen discovered resilience. They had been pulled to the edge of psychological manipulation, yet they survived, learned, and reclaimed autonomy. What had felt like total control from the group was, in the end, an illusion. Strength had always existed inside them, waiting to be noticed. The teen's story didn't end with total closure. Some scars remained, invisible to most, permanent in subtle ways. But with each small victory, a decision made without fear, a moment of authentic joy, a genuine laugh, the teen reconstructed a life that had almost been consumed by strangers behind a screen. They became a quiet advocate, warning friends, peers, and younger students about the dangers of online groups. Sharing lessons without fear, without shame, without overdramatizing, simply the truth. The teen had learned that knowledge, awareness, and support are the most powerful tools against manipulation. In the end, the teen looked back not with bitterness but with perspective. The group had tried to take control, but it had failed. They survived. They grew. They were no longer defined by the whispers of strangers behind screens. They were defined by their courage to step back into reality, to trust again, and to reclaim their own life. And somewhere in that quiet victory, they understood a truth that few ever learn. The world can be cruel, online and offline, but even in darkness, the choice to step into light is always yours. Even after stepping away from the group, the teen couldn't fully shake the shadow of what they'd been part of. The name 764 was whispered in corners of forums, hidden in screenshots, repeated in cautionary stories online, an ominous reminder that this wasn't an isolated experience. The group wasn't just manipulative, it was part of a larger, calculated network preying on teens, a phenomenon known as the 764 network. At first, the teen felt shame for not seeing the red flags sooner, for letting themselves get drawn in. But gradually, understanding replaced guilt. They realized 764 wasn't a reflection of their weakness. It was a reflection of how sophisticated these groups could be, how they preyed on loneliness, vulnerability, and the deep human need to belong. The teen became an advocate, quietly at first, then more publicly. They shared their story with friends, counselors, and online forums dedicated to exposing the 764 network, highlighting the tactics used to manipulate teens. Isolation, subtle coercion, loyalty tests, and emotional pressure. Every detail they could safely share became a warning, a shield for others who might encounter 764 or similar groups. Recovery was a process, not an event. The teen rebuilt connections with family and friends, rediscovered passions and hobbies lost during the time spent online, and learned to trust themselves again. They no longer measured their worth by messages, likes, or approval from strangers. Instead, they measured it by real-life interactions, self-respect, and autonomy. Yet, the memory of 764 lingered. Every notification ping brought a brief flash of fear. Every new social media group was met with skepticism. But now the teen was equipped, not with naivety but with awareness, caution, and the strength to step back before anyone could manipulate them again. The final lesson crystallized clearly: belonging can be a trap. Validation can be weaponized. And online communities like 764 can feel like refuge, until they slowly turn into prisons. But knowing the signs, recognizing the patterns, and relying on genuine support makes all the difference. The teen's voice, once drowned out by the controlled messaging of 764, was finally theirs. They told their story publicly, warning peers, educating parents, and encouraging safe online behavior. I survived 764. And if you ever feel like you're trapped by a group online, remember this: you're stronger than their whispers, smarter than their manipulation, and you're never alone in real life. It was a message of hope, hard-earned and necessary. A story that reminded viewers, even in darkness there's a way back. A way to reclaim control. A way to survive. And as the teen closed the laptop for the night, breathing freely for the first time in what felt like years, the screen stayed dark. The whispers of 764 were gone, but the lessons they left would last forever. As we close this story, remember, what happened here isn't just fiction. Online predators like the 764 style groups exist, and they're constantly finding new ways to manipulate and control vulnerable teens. Parents, stay vigilant. Talk openly with your children. Watch for subtle changes in behavior, secrecy, or isolation. Teens, trust your instincts. If something online feels wrong, it probably is. Reach out to someone you trust. Stories like this happen every day, and awareness is the first line of defense. That's why on The Crime Lens we bring you chilling, eye-opening stories like this one, not to scare but to educate and protect. If you found this video valuable, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to The Crime Lens so you'll never miss another story that could save a life. Before you go, drop a comment and tell us, where are you watching from? We love seeing how far our viewers reach, and sharing your location helps us connect with the Crime Lens community around the world. Stay safe, stay aware, and always question what you see online. See you in the next video. Bye for now.